Hello and welcome to another Aptera news update. So the big news from Aptera was of course the pausing of the accelerator program, which I'll get to later in this video. But first I wanted to take a look at some content recently created by another Aptera fan called Josh, who runs the channel Saving Green. Now he's kindly let me use some clips from this video, so I will put a link to the video down below. Please do check it out. He has some great content, and this specific Aptera video is really interesting. So basically he goes on a tour of the Aptera factory inside, but he also gets to meet some of the engineers, and the parts that really interested me were first of all the solar panels. If you skip to about 9 minutes 30 in the video, you then come to the solar panel construction, and you can see here the Maxeon cells after they've been welded together in their little groups. And what interested me about these is that I actually have my own Maxeon solar cells. So I thought I'd dig out my Maxeon solar cells from a couple of years back and see what the difference is. Now this is the first time we've really seen the finished, or what I'm assuming is the finished solar cells for the Aptera. And they do seem to have made a few slight modifications. And in my experience with the Maxeon solar cells, these new ones do seem to be more flexible. I don't know how exactly they've managed that, but the ones I have are actually very brittle. So it's quite impressive to see how they can bend them quite a lot compared to the ones that I have. So whether or not these are specific solar cells made for Aptera, or if the new Maxeon solar cells just happen to be slightly more flexible, it's a bit unclear. So if we compare these to my solar cells, I have two different sorts here. I have on the left is a JE3 Maxeon solar cell, which has a 23% efficiency. This is several years old. And then I have a KE3, which is about a year newer, as one of the newer cells, and that has a 24.4% efficiency. I think they're both Gen 3 cells. The KE3 might be a Gen 4 cell, I'm not quite sure. But the ones in the video, the ones that they're showing, are actually Gen 6 cells. And later in the video, he then talks about the possibility of Aptera incorporating Gen 7 cells, which would be incredible. So what's important to note here is that a Gen 7 cell, although it might have a slightly better efficiency than 24%, maybe even pushing 25%, that doesn't mean the panel efficiency of the Aptera will have this magical high number, because the panel has gaps between each cell and it's also laminated, which reduces the efficiency of the overall panel. So that's how you get a panel with 25% efficient cells that ends up with something like 19% efficient panel. But presumably it will be a slight boost if we do manage to get the Gen 7 cells in the Aptera. The only slight problem I can see with that is the cells themselves tend to get slightly bigger, which means they may have to re-engineer the entire roof or the entire shell to be able to fit these new cells into the new structure, but it will give more surface area and more performance overall. But I'm sure we'll find out further down the line if that's the case or not. So as you can see from my Maxeon solar cells, the dog bone connector or the wishbone connector or the bar connector, whatever you want to call it, you can see the construction of the Aptera wishbone is very slightly different to the ones you can buy online. It is very different to the ones that I have because it has these extra splits at the end and in the middle, which is giving them the extra flexibility to be able to curve in two directions without breaking the welds, without cracking the solar cells. I was wondering how they were going to get around this problem, and that is clearly how they've done it. So maybe this is one of their patents, not sure. It'll be difficult for them to patent the solar cell itself because that is proprietary technology from Maxeon. But how they connect and how these panels are constructed, that is probably where most of Aptera's patents lie. And although these ideas are very simple, they're obviously very critical for creating double curved surfaces and keeping that aerodynamic shape, which is so important for electric vehicles. That for me was the most important part of this video, seeing how they've constructed that. As I mentioned before, please do go and check out this channel and see the whole video because different people will find different parts interesting. It was very good to see the factory is slowly progressing and they're starting to get all the pieces of machinery in place. And Chris looks as busy as ever, meeting people and making arrangements, which is also great to see. There was no comment on the Sandy Munro comments about the production schedule. They seem to be sticking very much to the original narrative and the original schedule that we've been told repeatedly before. I'm not sure if this was filmed before the Sandy Munro comments or after, but either way, the fact that Aptera themselves have not said anything about a very early September production start. If anything, I would take these comments to mean the beginning of the testing of production. Testing the factory setup, maybe individually or together, making sure that they link up properly and the workflow is correct, things like that. Maybe they can produce an Aptera using this method in the early days. I wouldn't hold my breath. I suspect he might have misspoken slightly and given a lot of people false hope. But either way, they seem to be making very good progress on the low production factory layout. So quickly back to the Aptera leaderboard and the accelerator program. Now, they did mention that they had to pause this investment phase because of the SEC regulations, and some other YouTubers have touched on this as well. That makes perfect sense. Raising funds like this quite often requires fixed amounts or fixed periods that then have to be taken into account. But it did seem to create a little bit of excitement, and there was a sudden rush of investment. We're suddenly down to 714 places remaining. So we now have less than a third of the places remaining, and they've already nearly hit their $20 million minimum target that they were aiming for. So this seems to have boosted it slightly. Maybe there'll be another drought after this period because a lot of the investors have rushed forward. They were planning to invest later maybe. Who knows, we'll wait and see. But it's good that they got a small chunk of money again and they can keep on investing in the infrastructure. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, if you want to reserve an Aptera, please use the link down below. That will save you $30 off the reservation fee, which is totally refundable. Thanks guys, I'll see you next time.